Hello again, friends, fellow hunters, and outdoor enthusiasts. Welcome to In the Wild Outdoors with Brenn and Jesse. I'm co-host, singer-songwriter, big game hunter, and sometimes hunting guide Brenn Hill of Hooper, Utah. Here with co-host, bush pilot, hunting guide, my brother from another mother. He's the owner and operator of Saddlehorn Outfitters. His name is Jesse Tatman of Daniel, Wyoming. And we're excited again to bring you stories and insight on all things pertaining to the West, and particularly Western big game hunting. This is In the Wild Outdoors.
So what brought you into where did your hunting start? How did you get into the outdoors and the hunting world?
You know, like you, I started so young that I don't really remember my life without it. You know, I was 4 years old when I went on my first mule deer hunt with my dad and my granddad, and we went out and met my uncle and my cousins, and I think I had a couple of brothers there too. And when I was young, those were our family vacations. My uncle was kind of a hero of mine. His name was Ray Hill. He was killed in a woodcutting accident in '96 and wrote a song called the Hill Family Song, you know, to sing at his funeral. But the hunting adventures were partially to hunt, and the other half of that was we were wood hunting, and we were getting firewood. And Ray had wood burning stoves in his house, so we would fill his truck and our truck and a couple of trailers with wood every time we were hunting. So we'd hunt till 9 or 10 or 11 or something, and then eat a sandwich, and then spend all that those hot fall afternoons. I can still, smell two-cycle smoke and sawdust, but they were just great times. And usually, like you say, there was more critters around. So in those days, most of those tags were full by the time 10 or 11 a.m. came around. But I didn't know really. I knew I was having a great time. I knew I was having the time of my life. I just had no idea that they were so good, and partially because of the guys that were a part of it that just aren't around anymore. And, some of these guys were just old time guys, classic Westerner type guys that they were tough and, they were just, I don't know, it was just different. We just had more places to hunt, and there was more critters to hunt. It seems like, we didn't wear camo. We wore a plaid flannel shirt and jeans and Lee Ryder jackets. They'd get soaked in the rain and the snow and be so cold, but we just, we had the time of our life anyway. And so that stuff got in my blood and my soul so deep that I just, it was set me on the course of my life, really.
And those guys, it come from there. From your grandfather to your father and your uncle, and from your great grandfather. Like, this has been passed on for generations and generations, and then now you're passing it on to your boys. You bring your boys, and your daughter have been to my camps before. And it's part of it. It's the outdoors. And I know you guys like to take your trips and go skiing and all of that. That's all outdoor activities that we involve our families in, and it's great. So when do you think, what age was you when you remember, taking your first animal? How old was you?
I think I was 12. In Wyoming, you could hunt, Utah I think was 14. Wyoming was 12. My dad bought me a Wyoming deer tag. And this was a Region K deer hunt, and actually, I think the first deer that I killed was a 4-point, but it was the smallest. I think I won the smallest 4-point mule deer ever killed. The big buck contest.
Yeah,
I won the little buck contest with a 4-point. This was just a crazy little buck, but I thought it was a trophy, and. I just remember that morning, so many things about that morning. But I was 12, and my dad, as soon as I started killing critters, my dad would hand me a skinning knife, and he'd just stand over my shoulder and he'd say, "Cut that, don't cut that, be careful here, be careful," whatever. And so I think from about 12 years on, and then of course when my dad would kill something, he'd hand me the skinning knife and he'd say, "You're up," So I think from about 12 years till now, I've gutted every critter I've killed and skinned every critter I've killed, except for maybe a few, and my dad's. Yeah.
Right. And your dad's what, 94 now?
94, and he would get in the truck with us right now, and he'd go hunting. In fact, he's talking the other day. He's just like, "Yeah, I'm gonna have to get out and do a little more hunting next fall." 2 years ago, this last fall, he killed about 160-inch mule deer down on the Book Cliffs.
I remember that. Yeah.
And we literally we lift him. Me and my oldest son lift him out of the truck, and we go down in this kind of ravine there right by the truck and help him up the other side and get him set up, and we get him on the critter, and I don't know, it just that passion, and I could tell watching my dad, at 92, he still had a little buck fever, and I think, and there's times, I think I got way too much buck fever, but I decided right then and there, if the day ever comes when I don't get buck fever, having a big old ball-faced, mule deer, dark horn mule deer buck looking at me, it's time to check my pulse.
Right, it's the same for me.
Yeah.
And I even get it still today, like guidance sometimes, I'll be like, "Shoot that one right there, right now."
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
It just, if you don't get that excitement,
oh, man.
you don't have a pulse.
No, and I'll tell you, we take guys out and take them hunting, and they're like, "Man, I'm going to get buck fever," and I tell them, "You know what? So am I, and thank heavens you are, because I hate to go out here with guys who don't."
Yeah. Exactly.
That's what makes it fun. That's why we're there. We're there for the thrill of the hunt.
So what's your favorite style that you like to hunt, do you think?
Yeah, I'm probably a spot and stock guy, Western spot and stock guy. I my favorite things to hunt are mule deer and black bears. And, nowadays I'm looking for deer that are at least 180 inches and better, and, looking for mature critters. And I don't, if I have a tag in my pocket and I don't find, a mature trophy critter, I'm not going to shoot. I don't mind taking tag soup. I've got no ego anymore. I've hauled critters out of the bottom of a canyon that about killed me and everybody else I was with, and a few times of doing that, and that beats that ego right out of you. But I'm out there for the thrill of the hunt. I can glass days without seeing the critter I'm after, and then finally see him, find him, and hunt that one critter. And that's why I love black bear hunting. I think is the other thing I like to do, and I like those big deep canyons of northern central Idaho and western Montana and that bear country. And you look at those kind of timbered patches and the grassy slopes in between, and you go maybe a day, 2-3 days without seeing a critter, and then all of a sudden there's a big black ball of fur out there, and I just love it. I live for it.
Yeah. Do you, that brings to mind, I like doing that too with bears, and, some of my favorite is hunting old logged out or burns, because you can glass them, you can get across and you can glass in there and glass the bears up, and I like that too.
Clear cuts.
Yeah.
I just love, a clear cut that's a few years old, that's just kind of starting to grow in, and right 2 hours, an hour before really the sun's going down, particularly in the spring. I just love watching a clear cut until the sun goes down for a black bear.
Yeah, being able to see the sunset and the whole environment, nothing knows you're there. The animals are just doing their thing, Same with, and you might think the same thing, but, you're glassing and the elk are bugling in the morning, and everything's just kind of calm except for what nature's doing.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, I agree.
Yeah, I go hunting with a tag and a rifle, or mostly, nowadays I'm hunting so much with my sons, and they've got a tag and a rifle, and we're out there, we're in pursuit. But man, I'm just there for the whole experience. I have less concern about the outcome nowadays. And I mean, I'm 48. I've been doing it all my life. I just realize how fortunate I am just to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember the last spring when we took Briggs and he got that bear, and you guys went up there and he shot the bear, and then it got dark that night.
Yeah.
How many sleepless nights have you had like that?
Oh man! And I'll tell you what, I was more sleepless because that was Briggs's first bear than if it was mine.
Right.
I guess maybe, but it really I probably was more sleepless. And never forget, walking down in that draw, and you and Jake are on one side and me and Briggs on the other. You hollered out and said you'd found him. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know going up there that morning, I'd asked Briggs how much rest he got that night.
Yeah. No, he didn't sleep at all. Yeah. He didn't sleep at all.
So it's fun to get our kids, and it's fun to see, to see Briggs's face when he walked up on that bear to be standing there.
Man. Yeah.
And I told you, we're going to find the bear, but we're probably going to find it tucked up under a log or something, and it's not going to be real easy because their bears are like pheasants. They find a place to bury themselves into sometimes,
Yeah.
But
yep.
Yeah. So, what's your favorite state to hunt? Do you think?
Oh
in the
gosh,
West?
that's such a tough call. I love my home state. I love Wyoming. I love Montana. But I've had so many just really golden family memories in Idaho, and that central Idaho country east of Boise. 32 and 32A and 22 for bears. Those are controlled unit bear tags. They did a bear study. They closed those units for 20 years. And I had hunted them as a kid before. Well, I wasn't a hunter, but I went as a kid with my dad and my uncle and cousins and my dad's hunting buddy who's a taxidermist. His name is Bruce Bennett. A lot of what we do hunting-wise as a family is because my dad's best buddy got us into it.
Yeah.
And Bruce Bennett, was one of these guys that got him into black bear hunting back then, and so we would hunt in that area, and then they closed it for 20 years, and they had the highest concentration of black bears and the highest concentration of color phase black bears in the lower 48 in those two units they opened up for a as a draw, and it took me 23 years to draw the tag, personally, but I went up there with, the GI doc had that tag. My buddies from Colville had that tag. I went up with them. And so anyway, I've written songs about that part of the world, and I still go up there. The units north of that, the Selway, the Clearwater, all that country is country I've hunted a lot. When I was just starting out playing music, I played at a storytelling festival or cowboy poetry gathering or something like that in Montana, and I met a guy. He was walking down the road back to his motel, and I thought, man, I should give that guy a ride, because you could just tell this guy had been horseback all his life, and I mean he kind of had rough knees, and I didn't stop. I didn't give him a ride, and so then the next time I see him, it's over at the gathering, and I went up and I said, hey, I introduced myself. I was like, I wish I would have given you a ride, and we became just immediate fast friends. He was a funny guy. He had come out of Vietnam and taken Forest Service contracts, clearing trails and rebuilding campgrounds in Salmon. He lived in Salmon. This was all the mountains around Salmon. Then he went up to western Montana on the what do they call that? The South Fork, Flathead.
Yep.
And so all this, and he would go into the Bob Marshall for months at a time. He'd start out with a pack string that was given to him by the Forest Service, and he'd go back in and clear trails. And anyway, his name was Charlie Camden, and he got me into coming up into that Clearwater country. He was living on the Clearwater River when I met him, and and he got us over into spotted bear and some of that country. His son is still one of my best friends. We still hunt together several times a year, Jeff. And so anyway, I credit those guys for getting me into that northern Idaho country, and then I hunted whitetails, up there, and black bear and mule deer, and we've hunted elk, and I mean, we just had all kinds of adventures. Going back into the woods with a Camden is, your life hangs in the balance, because, these guys would go back on a pack string into the Bob Marshall with a toothbrush and a jacket, and their tent, and they'd eat sage grouse and fish, for a month at a time. So they don't look at remote country as being away. That's sort of home for them. Yeah. And they're very comfortable there. And I had to kind of realign my thinking and realize, wait a minute, just because I'm out here in the middle of the woods doesn't mean I can't, provide for myself. I can live off rough grouse and a few days of that you get pretty hungry for a hot dog, but
yeah, it's funny when you're living in the backcountry, what you start craving.
Oh man,
like after 3 or 4 days or a week, you're like, man, a piece of pizza would be amazing.
Oh gosh, yeah, hamburgers. And I've bathed in creeks and rivers before, and I can go 2 days or so. I can go 2 days without dunking myself in some body of water and cleaning up. Yeah.
Yeah, I've spent some serious time in Alaska where you don't want to climb in the water.
No, that's a little chilly.
Yeah, but no, exactly. So you talk a lot about your songs, and the people that know your music know that you sing a lot about that Clearwater, the Salmon River country, Spotted Bear. Yeah. You have a lot of songs. McCall, you've written and sing a lot of songs about that country, and so it speaks for itself that you love that country a lot, and it's beautiful over there, and it's wild. I think the wolves are taking it over a lot up in that country.
It's so different, now with the reintroduction of the wolves, or really the introduction of a wolf that was not native to the area, and there's several guys that have had now the succession of outfitters that have had the Selway camp there at Paradise, Idaho, and the last guy that had that, he was a friend of mine. I played at his retirement party, and one of the guides that had worked for Selway Mountain Outfitters for about 3 outfitters told me, he said, there has never been a time there wasn't wolves in the Selway. We've had wolves there. He says, what we didn't have is Canadian gray wolves in the Selway. And, I went somewhere around 07, 08 with Jeff, and I were up there on the Selway looking for moose. He had a moose tag that year, and man, there was a lot of moose. 5 years later, 6 years later, we go up in there, and you can't buy a moose. And this was late September. The elk weren't singing. Middle of September, it was just different. It just felt like a ghost town. And I know, guys that have been in conservation. Conservation officers and biologists in Wyoming, they know it's a problem. They knew it was a problem. Butch Otter, former governor up there, started giving away a wolf tag with whoever bought an elk tag. They closed the Lolo region for elk hunting for a couple of years, So, we talk about conservation and land stewardship, and we all have a role to play there. And I think, when you hear hunters speaking up about their concern that, the introduction of the Canadian gray wolf has had a real negative impact upon wildlife, and we want to do something about it. We need to speak up about it. That is a conservation effort, and it's one that we've got to engage in. But I love the country still. It's different. The dynamic is different for wildlife up there. I'll keep going hunting there for as long as I live.
Yeah, I just know some of the outfitters up there, from the Idaho Outfitter, Guide Association, and some of those guys, they struggle hard because they just, if the wolves are there, the elk are gone.
Yeah.
And they struggle in business because they can't even offer, And then the fires last year were hard on them. With the wolves this morning, I got up there about, I don't know, 5 o'clock this morning, and I had to, we got about 10 inches of fresh snow. So last night I drove my truck down there to the county road, about 1.5 miles from the ranch house there. So I got on the snowmobile this morning, and sure enough, I started down the road, and there was one set of wolf tracks right below the house. I went down and around, got down there on the bottom side of the aspens, and my horses were up, up on top, and sure enough, there's a big old set of wolf tracks run right down the road, and they're there all the time.
Yeah.
You don't see them in the daytime.
Yeah.
But there's starting to be a lot of them,
I think the other dynamic that you and I contend with, you even more so than I, but certainly as a hunter I do, is grizzly bears. And the fact that, there's a booming population of grizzly bears outside of Yellowstone Park in all of that greater Yellowstone country. You got Jake is having grizzly bear run-ins. Jake and Gary are in the Palisades. Right.
And, I rode into that grizzly
you
2
did.
years ago on old Cinch, and it was touch and go there for about 30 seconds or something.
Yeah.
Between that, I rode right in between that sow and its cub, horseback, 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
It was pretty wild. But that's the grizzly bears are a big concern of mine because of the danger to my clients and my guides. But last year, I had Geronimo and Jake and Philip. They brought the horses in out of the pasture and they put them in a round pen. And last summer, Jake and I built that 7-foot high round pen out of log, and they brought one load of horses. They were headed to Palisades, and they brought one load of horses over, and then they come back, and they were going back to get another one. I get a phone call from one of the people that live close to me, and they're like, "Hey, you got a sow grizzly and 2 cubs over there at your house." And I was like, my gut just went right up my throat, because I know that those guys had brought those horses in and put them in that round pen, and it's like a dinner, they're trapped.
Yeah.
And so it was, those guys headed back over there, and of course nothing got in there with them, but the grizzly had been around there, we found his tracks and whatever right there, but it hadn't got in there and got any of them. But it was, the grizzlies they're so unpredictable, and I can say to the folks, if you want to learn about, hunting in grizzly country, there's a really good YouTube video out there that the Wyoming Outfitter Board put out, and they recorded it, about hunting in grizzly country, and it's really educational. It's really good to watch, and they can just go online and Google that, and it'll come right up. But
we should put a link up.
We should put a link up in our website for that. But it's a true deal, and Wyoming and Idaho and Montana are really working hard to get the grizzlies delisted so we can put the fear of God in them.
Yeah, I think using hunting as a tool to create that instinctual respect and fear of man is probably, it's time, and particularly with the grizzlies. People ask me all the time, "Are you ever get scared out there hunting black bears?" And I've had one black bear encounter. I guess I've had 2 black bear encounters where a bear turned and came at me, and one of them was wounded, and I was able to I had shot that one already. The other one was just a small mama black bear, and she had 2 tiny little cubs there, and I just put my arms up and she ran off, with her cubs. She was just being a good mama. But I really, all the bear encounters that I've had with black bears, they're trying to get away from me as soon as they see me, and or as soon as they smell me. And as I understand, that's just not the case with the grizzly bears.
Yeah, I've been through some grizzly charges. The people that know me very much know that I've had some grizzly encounters in Alaska, and I have a DLP on Kodiak. I got charged by a Kodiak brown bear up there and had to dispatch that bear.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I've guided a lot of brown bears and grizzly bears in Alaska, and I've hunted them in Canada too. But they're so unpredictable.
Yeah.
And, the difference between them bears up there and the bears down here, these bears down here, I wouldn't say they're more aggressive, but they're trained.
Mm.
The bears up there don't know what a human is.
Right.
And if you have a problem with one, it's because they just think they're the meanest thing on the planet and they're hunting.
Yeah.
Right? And you're moving, whatever. These bears down here running off people off of their camps, running off people off of the food source, that they just are flat out mean. And they just know that the meaner they get, they're gonna get what they want,
Yeah.
And we have no way of controlling them here. In Alaska, you're able to hunt them,
right?
They're huntable, but in Alaska, some of the areas you can harvest 2 grizzly bears a year per hunter.
Yeah,
but in the lower 48, they're still not delisted yet. And I read an article last night about they're trying to get them delisted in Wyoming, and they were saying that the plan, I think, was 850 bears outside of the upper Greater Yellowstone ecosystem, right? Mm-hmm. Well, so then they say no, now their count, they haven't got the 2023 count, but the previous count was 1,003 bears. So, they're, 153 bears over the limit of what the plan says, but the U.S. Fish and Wildlife still won't get them off the list. And there's a lot. There's a lot of bears. Yeah. And they're starting to get into people's cattle. They're starting to have some problems with them. So hopefully they can get that done to where we can start hunting them. And just like, they claimed, the wolves, releasing the wolves put what they call it, the ecosystem back into norm of the hunting elk and the elk being scared of the wolves. Well, it's the same thing with the bear. The bear needs to be,
absolutely,
have some fear about humans too, because people get mauled every single year. And it's the hikers and whatever.
It's not just hunters that are having bear encounters.
No, it's not. And bear spray works unless the wind's blowing 25 miles in your face.
You're right.
And then bear spray is going to blow right back in your face. It don't do very much damage to the bear.
Exactly. Right. That's why I always carry the kind of bear spray that can keep going in 25-mile-an-hour wind.
That's what I do too. Yep. So, back to our, talking about you. So, how did your music start, Brenn?
I go back to a trip. It was a black bear hunt, horse, big, hoorah Western adventure thing. Like I say, I'm surprised nobody got killed. But we were there in central Idaho. My cousin had a battery-powered, it was like, I think they called them Sony Walkman. But this one, you didn't have to have headphones on. It had a speaker. And so it fit in a saddlebag. And we had a cassette tape copy. You used to have those double-deck cassette, and you make a copy of the original. That was the earliest form of piracy, And so anyway, it said Cowboyography on it. And we listened to this tape over and over till we wore the batteries out. And we were, listening to the voice of a guy that my mom had records of Ian and Sylvia from the 60s, I had no idea it was the same guy, And we were listening to Navajo Rug and The Gift and Claude Dallas and all these just great songs that were on that Cowboyography record. And anyway, when I would get on a horse, my dad and my uncle would put me on a horse, I'd get off and I'd write. And, riding and writing kind of went hand in hand for me. And I was writing cowboy poems and short stories and cowboy songs and playing guitar. I'd started playing guitar about 10 or 12 and playing piano. My mom made me take piano lessons. and I hated them, but I love her for it now, of all the many things I love her for, because it really taught me music theory, you know, and that helped me be able to write with some structure. But yeah, I was writing cowboy poems. I had no idea that there was such a thing as cowboy poetry. And my mom worked for this old mule skinner guy from Plain City that had been out to Elko, to the cowboy poetry gathering. And he said, you got to take Brenn out there, you know. And so literally within a year or two, I think, of being in central Idaho listening to Ian Tyson, I go out to Elko and sit there and listen to Ian Tyson sing to me live.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm nudging my dad saying, this is the guy. And he's like, yep, that's the guy. And man, it was just, I was hooked. I was just, you know, really, they set me on the Ian Tyson, Don Edwards, Michael Martin Murphey, you know, Red Steagall, Baxter, Black, and Waddy Mitchell, you know, the cowboy poets. There was just a slew of great cowboy and cow lady poets out there at the time, writing great literature about the rural West. And man, it was an education for me. You know, I got insight on the real deal Western lifestyles, and you know, people that were still connected to the land and agriculture and outfitters and all kinds of, you know, it was just a melting pot for all things West and the culture. And it set me on the course of my life. You know, I decided I was going to write songs and sing about, you know, about the West, and it sure wasn't the stuff that was on the radio, you know, but I sort of just put my head down and went to work as a songwriter, and I guess I haven't strayed off course very far.
Yeah, and I know that, you know, in your music, because I go watch you all the time, you know, I go everywhere that I can to watch you.
You'll fly a plane to a Brenn concert.
Yeah, I've done that multiple times, a slow one even.
Yeah.
But, you know, the one thing that I love about it is, and it separates difference, is, you know, I know on your albums when you release them, you have a band comes in and does some of that. And I don't know the whole story about all that, but when you'll go watch you on stage, you know, you have your harmonica over your neck, your guitar, and then, you know, you have your deal with your foot, whatever that is.
Yeah, my stomper.
Yeah, and then you just sing, you know, and you sing your songs about what you love, and that's what, you know, your followers that you have, and it's a different, I think, type of music than a lot of others offer, right?
Yeah, well, you know, we're storytellers, and we're there to tell the story of the people that are the real deal people, and, you know, the story as we found them, the story as we conjure them up sometimes, you know. They're not all true, but a lot of them are. And you know, as an artist, I've written about the things that, you know, that I've experienced, and, you know, I've been able to go back in the back country on horseback. I've been able to cowboy and all these things. I had to chase down these stories, you know, and it cost me some hide and some bone, but man, it's just been great. You know, the thing about our genre, we have these solo balladeers, and I realized this a few years ago. It was during Elko, probably 10 years ago now, and Murph, we call him Murph, Michael Martin Murphy, called me up and he said, hey, I know you're playing at the gathering. He says, I'm going to play over at Stockman's, and he says, the sound man over there, he kind of quit me, and so I need somebody to run sound for me. So I was okay, I can run sound. You know, he's going to play at 10 o'clock. Usually I'm done with everything at the gathering before then, so I ran sound for Murph for a couple of nights, and I sat on the edge of the stage 10 feet away from Michael Martin Murphy, who, in my opinion, is one of the greatest solo guitar player balladeers ever to have lived. And he was just spot on both of those two nights. And I started thinking about the times I'd listened to Don Edwards and the times I'd listened to Ian and Tom Russell. And, you know, I had another mentor named Chuck Pyle that was just a great guitar player, singer. I thought, man, that is what we do. We play guitar and sing. And this little genre has a bunch of guys that do it really well, and gals that do it really well. Particularly now, we've got Kristen Harris and Trinity Seeley and Corinne Marie, Andy Hedges, Corblund, Ned Ledoux. We've got a good little family of artists, and they're all really phenomenal guitar players and singers.
Yeah, and I know that, like you bring up Michael Martin Murphey, from the time that I was like probably 10, 11 years old, listening to Michael Martin Murphy on a cassette tape, driving with my dad, and then he was my favorite forever.
Yeah.
And then you talk about Ian Tyson and that album, I got that exact one.
Yeah.
And and then of course I met Trinity with you.
Mm-hmm.
And these artists, it's fabulous for me to go watch you guys and just you solo out there and you play your song and you sing, and I've been able to experience it through you. How fast you can write a song amazes me.
Yeah, and part of that is just knowing what to do when the inspiration comes, I mean, I still segment time. I mean, when it gets busy, I really have to discipline myself, but I still segment time to write. And not everything that hits the paper is going to make it past, my cut. And I wad a lot of stuff up and throw it in the garbage can. But then there's those times, when you stumble onto an idea or a situation, and all of a sudden, it's just the flow of melody and lyrics. And you live for those times as a songwriter, because it's not going to take you long to write that song. Chris Ledoux and Ned Ledoux have a duet on One Hand in the Riggin'. And
I was just going to ask you about that one.
Yeah, Chris was an icon and a hero of mine, a mentor, a champion, one of the greatest guys to this day I've ever met in my life. And he sang, a version of One Hand in the Riggin' that I had in my safe forever. It never got released. And he and Ned just put this out as a duet. That song, I sat down with a steel guitar player. He was working on the Musicians Union at the time out in Nashville, and he was just an A-list guy, but he's really a songwriter. His name's Bruce Boughton. And we wrote that song in 20 minutes. I mean, it was just there. He had this kind of lyrical or melodic hook, and I kind of had the lyrical hook. And then we just started. I mean, it was like we sat down, we just played it,
Yeah.
And, other songs like Ode to Selway, just fell on the paper, and the Hill Family song and stuff like that. And some of these are tragic events, that inspire these songs. My uncle was killed in a woodcutting accident, and I got on an airplane and wrote Hill Family song on a napkin. And, so it's not always that inspiration comes at bright, happy times. In fact, it's probably the opposite, that most of it comes when you're fighting some kind of a demon or having hard times. And but yeah, I just live for those times.
I know last summer, it was fall actually, you called me. You were on your way back from Aspen. You'd been over hunting with Jake, and you and I had a good visit. You were driving. I was coming. Jake was actually on his way.
Yeah.
Like, you guys got out of the mountain. Jake was on his way. He got in his truck and was leaving there, headed to Daniel to come and guide hunters for me. And you got done with your hunt. I just got out of Alaska. I was up there guiding moose hunters. And you called me, and I was leaving. I was coming down out of McCoy Creek into Alpine.
Mm-hmm.
And you called me, and we were visiting. And then later that day, you were driving back, and later that day, I guess you told me that you got stuck in traffic or road construction up on top of Schofield, and it was like a few weeks later. You sent me a song, or days later, I guess, about Jake that you'd wrote about Jake, J.T. Wolf, and you hadn't released it yet. I've got it.
Yeah,
I've got
a copy of it. Yeah.
But it didn't take you very long to write that song.
No, and that was a handy traffic jam because it let me get it down. It was in my head, and Jake's one of these guys that is just one of a kind and had that, impact on me that I could turn around and write a song about our experience, and about him really.
And you wrote that for his birthday, and then every time he gets around me, I'll turn that on. I'll bring that song up, turn it on. He just gets the biggest smile, and his whole face lights up. And it fits him perfect. It's just to a T.
I notice. I think one of the things that really trips my trigger is a little bit of irreverence. And I think with that song in particular, Jake and I had been hunting up above Aspen. And so to get to where we were hunting, we had to drive through Aspen every day. And once you get up in that unit and you get up above Aspen, you're just in the mountains of Colorado, and you could be, anywhere in Colorado. But the fact that, there's billions and billions of dollars, of real estate right down below you, and a world that's totally different and disconnected from what we were doing for 4 or 5 days up there.
Yeah.
And Jake is one of these guys. He's sort of, there's an art to hunting that steep Colorado high mountain country.
Yep.
And man, Jake has got it. He's got it pegged. I mean, he's developed ways to hunt that country that the only way you could is to be there all your life and do it and have to be successful. And it's just so disconnected. But that sort of separation and the fact that Jake is living his way. And, those billionaires at the bottom of the hill, they can take it or leave it, or, it doesn't matter. He's doing his thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hiking with Jake is an endeavor on itself.
Yeah. Get some iron lungs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that guy can, he's built for it. He's tall, slender, and he can walk like nobody.
Oh, man.
So,
yeah.
So what's your favorite guitar, you think? Like, what?
Yeah, this guitar here is built by a friend of mine by the name of Joel Noland. And it's probably my favorite guitar, probably one that I think I probably will get buried with. I've got a Telecaster that's that old chunked up. They call it a relic, but it's just got a lot of miles on it. That light blue Telecaster of mine. And those are the two guitars I've told my kids, we don't part with them, But really, just the next guitar that inspires me to write, for whatever time that is, will be. And sometimes, sitting down and playing a guitar will trigger, that. There's songs in guitars. But yeah, this guitar and probably that Relic Telly are my favorite guitars ever.
Yeah, I know that you've played some pretty good songs around the campfire for me before, and I think that one made it to hunting camp. Yeah. It rode up the mountain in the back of the side-by-side. Yeah, that's a good long, and that was pretty inclement weather. Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah,
but them are memories I'm never going to forget.
Oh man, me neither. Yeah, you never forget those times.
You sitting around there singing, and the folks that got to listen to it. Callahan asks me all the time when you're going to release that song.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I'm working on it.
I said, well, I've been pressuring him.
Yeah.
I think it's his new number one. Anyway, so you got a song for us that you're going to sing for us?
I got a song. I think the song I have to play is "The Monster on Your Back," and this song just been so good to me and the family, and it's still the song that gets streamed the most and buys the most groceries at the Hill Ranch, and I wrote it about one of my cowboy heroes. My dad and my uncle would tell me stories of Bill Hadlock. He ran the Browning family spread up in Huntsville for 60 years, I guess. And in fact, he said it's the only real job he ever had. And we were headed up the mountain one morning back in 2007, and he was riding a big old long-legged bay colt. And I said, gosh, that's a beautiful bay colt you're riding. He said, well, he thinks there's a monster around every tree. One of these days he's going to learn the monster's on his back. And man, I had that song by the end of the day. One of those that just it was coming fast. Yeah,
that's awesome. So he worked just up the canyon up here then.
Up in Huntsville, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's not very far away.
No. Let's play the monster. Here's a song that has kept the wolves at bay for the Hill family for a number of years. I wrote this about one of my cowboy heroes. His name was Bill Hadlock, and he's since passed away. His family remains very dear friends of ours, and he will always be one of my cowboy heroes. This one's called The Monster on Your Back. Listen up, I've rode this mountain 70 years I've been alive. Choked on rocks and rattlesnakes, a wonder I've survived. Don't think I haven't had a bronc like you. Try me every time he thinks a monster is hiding around a tree. Well, the monster's on your back, son. Better try to understand. The cowboy that you're fighting now was born to this here land. And one day you'll learn your scars and all the fearlessness you lack. Don't worry about the things that you can't see. The monster's on your back. Now hear this, I've rode through howling hell and wind and snow and rain. I am oblivious to misery and pain, and that iron in your gizzard, it'll never go away. So long as you got work to do today, and there's a monster on your back, son, get your guts up off the trail. We've got a job to do, and I promise we won't fail. One day you'll learn your scars and all the fearlessness you lack. Don't worry about that ornery Charlie bull. The monster's on your back. You think that if you buck me off, I won't get back on. You could stomp me in the ground and I'd be gone. This old man ain't tough like he once used to be. Well, try me one more time and you will see. There's a monster on your back, son. Better start to understand. The cowboy that you're fighting now was born to this here land. One day you'll learn your scars and all the fearlessness you lack. Till then you're gonna have to trust in me. Monsters on your back. There's a monster on your back. Rawr. Folks, if you want to hunt with Jesse, which I recommend you do, it's a great experience. Go to saddlehornoutfitters.com. And if you want to listen to more of my music, go to any of your favorite streaming services. You can find my website at brennhill.com, Brenn Hill Music on the social sites. And you can be the lucky winner of a spring 2025 bear hunt with Jesse and Saddlehorn Outfitters by entering the Spring Bear Raffle at our website, www.inthewildoutdoors.com. Jesse, I think it is time for this episode's drawing.
Yes, I believe it is.
Yep.
We're going to draw this out of a Chaz Mitchell cowboy hat.
This is a Chaz hat, and Chaz Mitchell is Waddy Mitchell's son. He builds the awesome hats that we're wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are 100X Beaver that Chaz gets, and
we have a package we're giving away, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The package is a Brenn Hill package that you've put together.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
I think there's some CDs, a signed
T-shirt and a sweatshirt and some posters and yeah.
So that's pretty awesome.
Who won?
So I got the lucky winner here, and it's Gene Carter, Paradise Valley, Montana.
Oh, awesome! Congratulations, Gene. You can throw darts at this poster if you like. CDs work as coasters. if you don't have a CD player. Thank you.
That's all for this week. And thank you to all our show producer, Rich Casperson, here in Oasis Studios.
Remember, folks, we want to hear from you, so be sure to drop us a line. Sign up on our email list at inthewildoutdoors.com. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, please.
See you next time on the In the Wild Outdoors with Brenn and Jesse.
Take care.